started. So thank you so much for joining us as we continue how to stay positive. And we are also continuing our love series. That's what I'm calling it at this point, because now we're on week 3 talking about love. And I really believe, and to be specific, today is more so about vulnerability and the power in it. And when it comes especially to love, right? And I do believe love is very important right now with what the world is going through. And today was a very good example for myself, speaking from a vulnerable place. My name is Anuschka. I'm an empowerment health coach and energy healer.
I'm Samar Tahrani. I'm a addictionologist and I practice out of the state of Virginia.
And vulnerability. So I know it's gotten, with Brene Brown and whatnot, all of a sudden we've gotten way, and I don't know what's happening here. Someone's trying to call me. No, don't call me. But yeah, so I know that she's really brought light to the power and strength and vulnerability, and how when we are our authentic selves, when we actually do share from within, from our deep core, and get vulnerable with our emotions, there's emotional intelligence to it, right? So that's really what we want to talk about, especially when it comes to relationships, whether it's your loved one or romantic, right, or family, friends, whatever that looks like. Just being open and being communicative from a vulnerable place.
Vulnerability really at its core is you being able to look at yourself and to be honest with the emotions that you're experiencing and being able to convey that emotion, right? And speak on it, and then, and then recognizing that I can also have a vulnerable moment where there could be severe consequences as well.
Yeah, it's a
right?
risk.
It's a risk. It's a risk.
It's a risk that's worth it, though. One of the things that I love with Brene Brown, she says it's uncertainty. It's not knowing what's going to come out of it, and also it's taking a risk and being like having that emotional exposure. But what's the beauty in it is when you're coming from love and you're being vulnerable and you're sharing what's there for you, what you've been holding on to, you can actually completely shift a relationship around like this by doing so.
Right.
It
brings a lot of power into a relationship, vulnerability. And the reason is because you who are willing to go into that uncertain space, the effort that we put forth to communicate a very uncomfortable state that we're in, because we can take ourselves into being vulnerable, is normally received from a person who's able to also be in that state of vulnerable space with you, is very it's a much better place to be, right? It's within vulnerability that a lot of the most the toughest discussions that we can have with another person comes out. So it's literally like within that state of vulnerability that we can have some tough conversations, right?
And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, super uncomfortable.
The more you do it, the more comfortable it gets. And one of the things I realized, like I said, I had an experience earlier today, and I'm not going to get into the experience. I'm just going to share what I did from a vulnerable place. And the experience was, there was just differences in opinions, right? We all have that, especially right now. Lots of opinions, very strong opinions. And that's fine, right? And what it left me with is, as an empath, I take on energies from other people. So I could have just sat with that energy and I could have just let that be within, or I actually said, you know what, being what I'm feeling, I reached out to those that I thought, well, if there is anything there, now that's from a vulnerable place. Had I come from pride or I am right or whatever, it didn't come from there. it came from, look, this is what I'm feeling. I just hope I didn't offend anyone. I hope that we're all on a good page here, because the last thing I want amongst people, period, is to have any kind of issues. Like for me, I'm very conscious of that. And if I feel that somebody is holding on to something, or if I am, I always bring that conversation up, as uncomfortable as it is, because that is how it's going to get resolved. Whether you stop talking to one another and so be it, or for the most part, when you're coming from love and compassion, you can actually squash it like that. And that's what really, like, it's amazing how that actually just happened literally like less than an hour ago, so I can speak to the experience of it.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think a lot of people, including myself, even to this day, when I go into the core of being vulnerable, the mistake that we make is that we are vulnerability is weakness. And it's because, you're starting to get nervous because you're like, I don't know how to say it. What if I say it? And we go into that. What if what if I show weakness in my emotions, in my approach, and so what if this person that I am being vulnerable to and opening myself up to all of a sudden makes fun of me? And all of the what ifs that we like.
Mm-hmm. Or judges me. I think that's a big one for me. It's like, oh my gosh, now they're going to judge me, or whatever. And that's one thing I really want to share with people. And it's something I say all the time when I do public speaking or anything. Whenever there's judgment present, love is missing. And that's something I really do want to leave with people. So it's like, and when you come from love, there is no judgment. You can't have two of them together.
Absolutely. So I think that, we're at this very unique space and place in life. And within that, the uniqueness of this space and place that we are in, recognizing that, and understanding and believing wholeheartedly that vulnerability is actually strength, it's not weakness. To be able to come and say, hey, listen, I'm at this place in my life right now, and this is the emotion that I'm experiencing. And, and sometimes those conversations are with our intimate partners. Sometimes they're with people that we do business with. Sometimes it's with our siblings. Sometimes it's with our children, right? But vulnerability is this state of us, you have to love yourself enough to say, okay, here is where I am, regardless of, whatever the consequences are and whatever you may think, and anybody else may think. Like, okay, like here we go. This is my truth at this particular moment in time. And that's just that. And Brene Brown, actually, her work is really very spoken of for this topic, shame, resilience, vulnerability. And she has a couple of TED Talks that she also talks about this. So if you want to learn more, I would really say, that's not a bad place to start. It's actually a really, really good place to start. She's done so much research around vulnerability. And obviously, women have a better grips on being vulnerable than men, because, it's, at least for us as women, if we are vulnerable, it's more socially accepted than for men.
Thankfully, things are shifting in that area, and
right,
we're just on that cusp of it, for sure.
Right, obviously, as we learn more about vulnerability, and as we evolve as humans, and and growing, this whole idea of the past 20 years of self-development and self-growth and self-improvement that we're going through, that shift is coming. But nevertheless, it is more socially accepted for women to be vulnerable with their emotions, certainly, than for men. Okay. So
and it's easier too, in a sense, right? Because
sure.
Emotions are that feminine energy, and so it comes more naturally to women, especially women that have more of the feminine energy than the masculine energy, and it allows so it's getting in touch with the feminine energy really, and really allowing that part of you be your superpower, because it's a superpower to be able to just expose something within you that feels so uncomfortable.
Right. So, you know, if you don't know how to be vulnerable, take small steps, right? So you can just sometimes, you know, I mean, I know I get myself into this like great pickle when somebody calls and says, hey, do you want to do something? And right away, my first reaction is like, yeah, I want to do it. And I don't even give myself the opportunity to think, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Can I do it? You know, I mean, you know, I don't even give myself the chance to think. Like my first immediate response is yes.
Rather
Right?
than being like, what does my intuition say even, right?
Exactly. Giving myself the opportunity to think. So where I actually started was, I would say yes, and then I would have to go then back and say, you know I said yes, but I have to actually think about it. And that was vulnerable to me.
Mm-hmm.
That was my state of vulnerability, right? Until I learned, you know, and I'm pretty assertive by nature, you know, I mean, I grew up with an assertive mom, so I learned to be assertive, but that didn't take away from the space that, you know, here I want to please people, you know, the pleasing behaviors that come out that pushes us completely right outside of the state of vulnerability, right? Because now you're in the state of pleasing another person and all the junk that comes with that, right? So vulnerability is recognizing truly at this particular moment in time, who am I, what do I feel, and how is it that I want to proceed, right? And can I open myself enough to share that emotion that I'm experiencing with this, you know, situation that I'm in right now, right? And being able to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes some stuff, we have some stories, you know, unfortunately, there's so much shame involved in that particular story that we, you know, that's part of our experiences, that when you are getting ready to open up about it, you know, the vulnerability that it takes to come to the table and say, this has happened to me. This is my experience. This is what, you know, this is the reason that I behave a certain way, right? And I mean, and we all have it. I have it, you have it. Every human has those stories that, you know, that we're not fondly proud of, or, you know, whatnot. And one of the things that Brene Brown actually says is that, and it's with shame that this comes, you have to, or, you know, share, not you have to, but share your stories with those who are deserving of hearing that story, right? And this is one of the things that I took from her, and I share it and share it and share it more, because it's so important. The minute you are willing to become vulnerable enough to speak your truth, if the person who you're sharing it with does not have the ability to hear it, they're going to push your shame up and you know, and discourage you from being vulnerable, right? And that is so much not about you that it is about them. And I mean, I can tell you countless of times that I've done this, right? And I just, you know, now I know, I sit back and I just say, they were nowhere near where I thought that they were. They were nowhere near, you know, they take like one blip of what you told them, which is completely outside of that vulnerable space. And they say, oh, so is this what you're experiencing? And it's like, or what are we going to do now? And it's like, well, I didn't want you to do anything.
And well, that's the risk though, right?
That's the risk.
Because for a lot of people, it's easier to actually put up that wall. Yes. And really just, instead of being vulnerable, they put up a wall in protection mode, and they'll make that other person wrong, rather than actually having the conversation to really get clarity. There's been so many times where I've thought something, I've assumed something, and then I'll go and have the conversation, the uncomfortable conversation, and come to find out it was all in my head, and I just totally took it a different way, right? So that to me is also something to be aware of. I actually looked up, before this, I looked up some actions that you can take to start being more vulnerable. I know you started talking about that some more. So I wanted to share that with those that are watching right now too. And one of the first things is come from like that place again, always come from love and compassion, get connected to that, but ask for what you actually need. So when we're actually in pain, when we're hurting, it's sometimes easier to just dismiss it or suppress that pain in order to protect ourselves. Well, that's not going to do any good, right? Because at that point, people start to close off from one another and then disconnection will happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? It's like all of a sudden, it's like it's no longer that deep connection. It's like, well, now they become surface level and there seems to be like a white elephant in the room whenever they're around each other, and that's never healthy. The other thing is also be open to and willing to expose those feelings you're feeling. It's not gonna actually, you're not gonna die. So, and that's, I think, a lot of people, they're like, oh my god, they get so freaked out to go there because it's that risk that some are not willing to take. And the more you do it, I promise you, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
When you actually go there, you're able to start to say your truth, like Samara was saying, really express what it is that you really think and what you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is really what you can take on to be more vulnerable. And you can do it slowly. Maybe do it first with those that you're the most comfortable with before you go and do that with your boss, for instance.
Yeah. Or and sometimes, you have to say to yourself, I need a little bit of time in order to get myself to that emotional space where I can actually arrive vulnerable. And I mean, I've done this before. I've sometimes have told somebody, that, or the person that I'm addressing, I have to tell you about something that I'm not comfortable talking about now, which then puts me, for me, that really works well, because now I have to hold myself accountable to showing up and being vulnerable and speaking my truth. And even though that is probably extremely, extremely difficult for me.
Totally.
Right?
And that's actually really, that's brilliant that you said that, because that's one thing I coach on too, is say what's the most uncomfortable that's there for you first, get it off your chest, and that in itself creates a safe space.
Right.
If you feel like this is a really uncomfortable conversation for me to have, say it. If you feel like I'm scared that you're going to judge me or whatever it is that you're going to judge me about, say that first. Come from like, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you. And to be honest, it's been really uncomfortable, but I really feel like I need to talk to you about this, or I need to get this off my chest, or whatever that looks like. When you say it first, it actually releases it.
Yep.
And it allows you to be more vulnerable.
Yep. And so it's the last thing that I want to say about this, as I know I'm watching time, is that also recognize the signals that your body sends you. So like one of the things that I know that this is my moment of truth with honesty is, and I'm really fearful, right? I'm afraid of the consequences that I will receive. I know my body starts to, shiver and shake a little bit.
Yeah.
So then, so then I have to take breaths, just to kind of calm what my body's actually showing me, that this is so uncomfortable that I shiver a bit. Then I even become more confirmed that it is so important for me to show up and say, this makes me feel really uncomfortable. I'm really scared. However, I have to tell you what my truth is. And here is my truth. This is how I feel. And, and people hear it. I mean, I've done this now enough that I know, I've been criticized that you're blaming me, and I'm like, I know. You think your shit doesn't stink, and I'm like, no, mine does too, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you how I feel. These are my experiences, and that's it. I'm not saying I'm better. I'm just saying these are my experiences, and that's vulnerability, you know.
And to add to that, it's coming from the place, like I know the times that I've had these really uncomfortable conversations. I know if I were to put the walls up, I would cut that person out of my life. And if I value someone, a relationship, I have loved that person, I'm willing to go there because I don't want to have this awkward, disconnected relationship with them and close them out of my life. So this to me makes all the difference. And this, honestly, I can't imagine how many relationships and marriages could be saved by just taking on vulnerability. So that's it for today, unless anyone has any questions. Oh, we have over here Anahita on Facebook saying wonderful topic. Thank you for speaking about this. You're so welcome. And I know a bunch of people here are on Instagram, so there's no questions. Thank you so much for joining. And as always, if you want to take your health and well-being to the next level, or if you need more guidance in being more vulnerable and communicating in such a way where it's productive, feel free to reach out to us. We can definitely set up some time and discuss all of that with you as well.
Thank you for showing up again on a Friday.
Yes, thank you everyone. Have a
It's been
wonderful
good to be with you. Yes, have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Bye.